We're now post All-Star break. We've passed the trade deadline. All the rosters are set, and teams are ramping up for the playoffs. I think now really is the time of the year where we can start to ask the question, who's really contending? I think there's three obvious answers. Obviously, Oklahoma City, Cleveland, and Boston. Defending champs, and then the top two records in the league. We're going to talk a lot about the 40-20 rule and the implications that has had over, the course of the last 50 NBA seasons. And then we're also going to evaluate, the other teams like the Lakers or the Nuggets or the Memphis Grizzlies or the Houston Rockets. I don't really think there's any contenders in the East besides, Cleveland and Boston. And honestly, I don't really think Cleveland is going to be able to overthrow Boston either. But the West is a very different story, as it is every year. It feels like the West has so many different, competent teams and, teams on the rise, teams that are, trying to maintain the greatness that they've had over the last few seasons. Everybody's kind of in a different spot. And so we're going to break down each team and, in a little bit of detail, explain why we do think or don't think they're contending. We're going to get the first three out of the way. I do think they deserve their shine because they are the most clear-cut contenders of the the season so far. So Boston, defending champions, no significant injuries, no significant changes to the roster. Pretty much brought the same guys back as they had last year. It's pretty obvious that they're contending. They have been blowing teams out. Maybe not on the exact same win trajectory that they were last year, but they're pretty close. People are trying to say they've lost a step. I don't see it. They had a pretty mid-month of December into January, but now in the month of February, heading towards the playoffs, they've been getting right. So I don't really feel like there's anything that we've seen from them that would jeopardize their chances at contending for a title. Next up, we're going to talk about the Cleveland Cavs. I think with Kenny Atkinson, the upgraded head coach, I think this Cavs team has a lot of defensive identity. They just traded for DeAndre Hunter, so that was a very big deadline move that kind of solidified them as title contenders. You've seen a lot of teams that have, really good regular season records flare out in the first round or second round. So I definitely think the Cavs are going to be able to make it to the conference finals. That's no doubt in my mind. They're not going to have to play Boston. That's pretty much the 1 and 2 seeds, pretty much the guaranteed conference finals. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Rematch from last year. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell got hurt. Celtics were up 2-1 when that happened, ended up winning the series in 5. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Celtics can still have that level of dominance with Cleveland, or if Cleveland has gained a little bit of an edge, gained some ground. I do think that they're pretty obviously title contenders, though. The roster and the defensive versatility that they have at pretty much every position. Evan Mobley being the head of the snake there, but you still have guys like Jared Allen. Obviously, we already said DeAndre Hunter. But, there's also guys like Max Strus that can come off the bench, hit some big shots. You never know. It's about when you get hot. And I think this Cavs team has definitely shown that they have that gear that they can get to. We'll just see if they are, able to make it past Boston. I will talk about the Knicks for just a minute. The day that I'm recording this, not sure when it's going to go out, but when I recorded this, it's a Sunday around 3:30 right after the Knicks just lost and are now 0-7 against the Cavs and Thunder and Boston. And those three teams, obviously top three teams in the league, they're dominating everyone. But to say that you haven't even gained a game, I mean, especially against Boston, they're whooping you. Like, they've led by 20 plus in every single game this season. Just complete domination. And as a Knicks fan, I think you just have to accept that you're going to be a really good regular season team. But as long as Boston is in the conference, I just don't see them winning the finals. I just don't see them getting to the finals because Boston is a huge roadblock in that path. And all of those things can be said about every other team down the line in the Eastern Conference. The Western Conference is a completely different story, though, and I think when you look at the Thunder specifically, obviously the best record in the West, and competing for the best record in the league, they're a very talented team. They have a lot of different pieces. They obviously moved on from Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso, but they've got Cason Wallace taking a step up. They obviously have Chet Holmgren in the lineup, and obviously he's had some injuries, but by playoffs you're expecting them to be fully healthy. So we're just looking at, what this team can do, coming that time in May and June. Are they going to be able to get over the hump, get to the finals? The issue with them is just the experience. I just don't know that I see them winning the finals with no prior experience past the second round. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a very talented scorer, and a lot of his game relies on those, free throws. And I think the playoffs get called really differently. I do think that the Thunder match up well with most of the teams in the West. You've got really defensively versatile players, and you're really ready to compete with anybody. So now that we've got those three guaranteed, lock it in, 100% contending, all that stuff out of the way, I am going to transition into what we're going to call the 40-20 rule. It's if you're not familiar with it, it's something that exists in the last 50 years. If you make 40 wins before you hit 20 losses in the regular season. It sounds like a silly rule, but it has converted 46 of the last 50 champions, and even when you look at the outliers to that, they're like 0-4 with the Pistons getting Rasheed Wallace at the deadline type things, and this kind of transitions perfectly into the next team I want to talk about, being the Lakers. The Lakers obviously are not going to meet the 40-20 rule. Neither are any of the other teams that we're going to talk about. The only teams that have met the 40-20 rule 100% at this moment of this recording are those three aforementioned teams. The Lakers are an interesting team. I think this is the first time in LeBron's career. It took till he was 40, but I think it's the first time in his career where you say he's not the best player on this team. He's just not the best player on this team. And when you look at that and what that can do for LeBron, what responsibility that alleviates from him, allows him to lock in on defense. I don't know if you've been watching Laker games recently, but LeBron has been dialed on defense, just absolutely dialed. And it's because you have a guy like Luka who can handle the ball handling role. LeBron can cut off the ball. I mean, Luka's already found him plenty of times. Those two's IQs are at a different level when you talk about the game of basketball, and they're surrounded by really, really good defensive players. Dorian Finney-Smith, to name one. I don't know if Rui Hachimura would really count. I like Jackson Hayes a lot, but you've got size, you've got length, you've got, for lack of a word, girth, pause, but you know what I'm saying. They have a big team. They have, really good matchups in terms of how they, how you would expect them to play against the other teams in the league. I think the Lakers match up very, very well. The only problem with that would be the Nuggets because of Jokic. I don't think you want Jackson Hayes on Jokic for a full game. We obviously saw 8:30 start on Saturday the other day how, Lakers were able to create a lead, maintain the lead throughout the whole game. That was one of the big things is, in the past, especially in that fourth quarter, you didn't really have a guy that was 100% going to beat the Lakers. And as much as I love LeBron James, I think at this point in his career, it's a little too much to ask of him to be the clutch go-to guy. And I think Luka translates perfectly in that role. And then you kind of have like a Kareem and Magic-esque situation, probably more like the end of Kareem's career and still Magic Johnson, because obviously, the Lakers didn't draft Luka. They didn't grow up together. Obviously, that's a lot to stack up against. You talk about one of the best duos of all time with Magic and Kareem, two certified top 5 players of all time, in my opinion. But if Luka hits that trajectory and continues to ascend in his greatness, that duo may be looked upon differently, when we're talking about it in like 30 years from now. So I think the interesting thing to think about here is, do the Lakers have enough? And I think they have enough to make the finals. I don't know if they have enough to beat Boston, because hypothetically speaking, that's who you're going to have to beat, right? If I'm going to say, how do they match up against the best of the East? We're talking Boston. Boston is the measuring stick for pretty much every NBA team. I don't see anybody out west that I'm like, they're going to beat Boston. I think OKC could. I don't think they will, but I think they have a chance. And the Lakers are probably one of those other teams where I'm like, I don't know if they have the firepower, but I think that they do have really talented players, and those talented players can get hot at a certain time. And I really like JJ Redick. I like him as a coach a lot. He understands the game very well. He game plans very well. It's just about championship experience. And if he's going to be able to handle that pressure and be able to outcoach someone like Joe Mazzulla, it's not an easy task. Joe Mazzulla, very, polarizing guy. I think a lot of people have very strong opinions about him. Nobody's like, yeah, he's okay. Everybody's like, yeah, he's awesome. We love him. Or everybody hates him. I don't feel like anybody has a set perspective on him as a coach. But as for JJ Redick, I think, you're talking about dismantling what could be a dynasty otherwise. And I think LA, Celtics is the finals that the league is hoping for, just viewership wise. Bring that rivalry back. You've got a lot of star power, but they're going to have to earn it. They're going to have to go through the Denvers. They're going to have to go through the OKCs, the Memphis Grizzlies of the world, even the Timberwolves, Rockets. Those aren't all teams that I would consider contenders, but they're teams that, their name is worth mentioning in the conversation. We're going to talk about Denver in a little bit, but I just want to wrap up with the Lakers. I think that they do have everything that they would need to, contend for the title. It's just about how they gel, considering that they, are still figuring out how to play around each other. I think as a floor, you're talking about a second round exit more likely, but I do think they have championship potential. And it's really just about how well and seamlessly they'll all fit together. As I alluded to previously, we're going to talk about the Denver Nuggets now, a team that has won the championship, a team that in the past obviously not only got to the top of the mountain, but was victorious. Like, they are the standard right now, aside from the Celtics, right? We're not too far removed from a Denver Nuggets championship. And, if they didn't blow a 20-point lead in Game 7 on their home floor, like, we're talking about a very, very different season for them, obviously, like, no duh. But I think, honestly, they could have beat Dallas. I think they could have gone back to the finals. Who knows if they beat Boston? They could be back-to-back champions. And I think that composure that they lack, it's rare for a championship-winning team to kind of develop those issues later on. But, yeah, they probably could have put Minnesota to bed. Obviously they didn't, and here we are. And so I think you have to look at this new age, and you do see a lot of those one and done champions, right? Milwaukee, I don't even think they've been out of the first round since they won the championship. No, that's not true. When they were the defending champions, they were in the second round. They lost in Game 7 despite having a 3-2 lead against the Celtics, and then the next 2 years after that, they got eliminated in the first round. Now, do I think that's going to happen to the Nuggets? No, but they could have lost in a Game 7 as the defending champions in the second round. I'm just saying, if you follow that Bucks blueprint, they thought the Bucks could become a dynasty with Giannis. There's a very realistic possibility. I don't know about first-round exits for the next 2 years, maybe if Jokic gets hurt. But I don't know that the Nuggets being contenders is a guarantee. I'm still going to say that they're contenders, and I didn't say it officially, but I am going to say 100% we're stamping the Lakers as contenders. It's a little early in the Luka LeBron, life cycle here, but I see the potential there. I think you have to give them their credit and say that, especially if Luka's on his game and he's, potentially going to give you a 30-point triple-double on any given night, you have to respect that, especially, as someone who led their team to the finals last year. You just have to give credit where credit's due. So right now, I would say those are the 5 contenders. We're going to talk about Memphis in a second here. I really like Memphis, and I'm going to talk a little about Houston. I don't think Memphis is a certified contender, but they're right there. They're probably like the first. They're the 6th man, right? If I'm making a starting 5 of contenders, I really, really like them. I really do. But I just don't think I can put them over some team like the Nuggets or the Thunder or even, the Lakers just because of that star power. I love Ja Morant. I've seen what Ja Morant can do. He's obviously had some nagging injuries. He's obviously not 100%, and he hasn't been for some time. And it's kind of unrealistic, I would say, to expect that he would become that again. I don't think we're going to see that. Not to say that his career has peaked already, but he has become a different player. Since his young years, he's learned, he's grown, he's developed, he's embraced more of a team role. He's not trying to go out there and kill. He's just trying to go out there and control the game. And it's a different style of play. It definitely contributes to winning. But are you going to outperform Luka? Are you going to outperform Jokic? Are you going to outperform SGA? I don't think you can say that from Ja Morant. I don't think he's a consistent enough player. He can do it for a game or two, for sure. But it's like asking Donovan Mitchell to outperform, Jason Tatum consistently over a 7-game series. You'll have some games there where Donovan Mitchell is cold. I get it. But we're talking about consistency. Jason Tatum is that. SGA is that. Luka is that. Like, that's what those guys are, especially when the clock, is striking 12, when it's, game time. who's going to show up at the end? I don't think you can say Ja Morant's anywhere near those guys. And so that's why I just don't think Memphis has it. If Ja was to become that kind of a star in the playoffs, sort of like a Jimmy Butler-esque ascension, I could definitely see them squeaking into the finals. They would have to win a lot of impressive matchups. It would be one of the hardest roads to the finals in recent memory. And, I just don't see them making it to, over that hump. But I really do respect Memphis, and I think they're going to be a good player in these playoffs for years to come. They're definitely a tough out. Don't get it twisted. Video's getting long, so I'm going to, wrap this up quickly here, but I just want to mention the Houston Rockets. Definitely not going to label them or stamp them as a contender, but they're same thing as the Grizzlies. They've got a young, talented roster. They've got good veterans that are great contributors, and, the potential with them is high. You need Sengun and Green to have, big playoff performances, and they're not super experienced, and that's kind of the thing where it's like, if they were to get that experience, then you can start to say, okay, they're contenders. But I think they're a 4-5 seed. They're a tough out in the first round. Maybe they claw their way into a second round exit, but they're just not at that level yet. They don't have the maturity from their superstars yet. They don't have, same way we talk about like Ja Morant or Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., those type of guys. They're all really, really good players, but they're still not going to be that top 5 type of guy that you have a Luka, SGA, Jason Tatum, at the helm. And I think that's what a championship team needs. You need a star like that, and you need players around them. I think Houston has a lot of the star power that you would surround those guys with, but I think at a certain point, it might come down to, is it going to be Jalen Green or Sengun, and the other guy gets packaged for a number 1 caliber option, that wins you a title. So, yeah, the Rockets are not yet contenders. You're either going to need Sengun to become another Jokic or Jalen Green to, turn into an SGA. Like, it's going to have to be big growth from those guys before I consider them championship contenders, like, outright. They're definitely dark horse, same type of, team as Memphis. I have a lot of respect for them, but I just don't think I can label them as contenders. I don't really have a neat way to, tie the bow and wrap this up. But, those are my contenders, the official ones. Again, if you just skip to the end for whatever reason to see, I'll recap it. We've got Boston and Cleveland in the East. And then in the West, we've got the Thunder, we've got the Nuggets, we've got the Lakers. So those are my 5 contenders. And those are all the reasons why I do think that they all could theoretically make or win the finals. And, if you really enjoyed this, I appreciate it. Appreciate you for sticking around, trying something new here. So if you dig it, just leave a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are on all this stuff, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care.